On today's episode of the Wild Party Podcast. My guest is Ashton Roberts, Manager of Supply Chain and Analytics at Bragg Live Foods, the century-old wellness brand best known for its iconic apple cider vinegar. Ashton brings a fresh perspective to this legacy company, leading efforts to modernize Bragg's supply chain through data-driven forecasting, supplier partnerships, and sustainable innovation. In our conversation, Ashton shares how Bragg is balancing its deep roots in wellness with a forward-thinking approach to technology, from optimizing logistics and reducing emissions to preparing for the next phase of a B Corp certification. We also talk about what it takes to maintain stability through global supply challenges, the company's commitment to remote work and flexibility, and how a culture of wellness influences every decision, right down to our favorite Bragg products. This episode is filled with insights 100 years in the making. Let's get the party started. Welcome to the Wild Party Podcast, where we celebrate the visionaries behind vegan, ethical, and sustainable business. In each episode, we'll dive deep into their journeys, uncovering the why behind their mission-driven business. I'm your host, Stephanie Lahart. Tune in with me for passionate discussions about overcoming challenges, innovative marketing strategies, and the power of using business as a force for good. So whether you're an entrepreneur seeking guidance or a conscious consumer wanting to support impactful brands, join us as we explore the stories behind the businesses that are changing the world for the better. Let's get the party started. Well, today's a little different, and I am really excited about that because I'm joined by Ashton Roberts. Now, she is the Manager of Supply Chain and Analytics at Bragg Live Foods. Oh, yes, people, we are talking to Bragg today, and you know that brand as well as I do because they are one of the most iconic and trusted wellness brands in the world, and one that I have personally been using for, I don't even know when I was first introduced to Bragg, honestly. But for over a century, Bragg has been a household name for healthy living, from their famous apple cider vinegar to their growing line of natural wellness products. Now, Ashton plays a key role in guiding Bragg's next chapter, where legacy meets innovation. And that's something we really talk a lot about on this show is like, once you get started in your business, how do you grow? How do you manage that next step? And she's really been instrumental in building data-driven forecasting systems and really strengthening those supplier partnerships and using technology to increase efficiency while reducing waste. Now, we're going to talk about how Bragg is modernizing its supply chain without compromising its core values, because we're all about the values on this show, and how it's really reshaping the wellness industry and what it takes to navigate growth through times of global uncertainty. So with all that said, Ashton, welcome to the show. Let's get this party started.
Let's do it.
Oh, Ashton, I am so excited to talk to you. Okay, first of all, like I said in the intro, I don't even know when Bragg first came into my awareness. Like, I've always known the product, like apple. In fact, I have one with me right now. My favorite one right now is this pineapple turmeric. It's insanely good. And it is one of those things that it's like you see everywhere now, like people are drinking apple cider vinegar and they're using it on salads and they're using it on ingredients. And I really don't even know where this started, right? And as I was doing research on the company, I'm like, God, it's been around for like over 100 years. This is nothing new. And God, we love a health fad, especially in the US. But when we're talking about businesses, like I told you on the pre-show, it's like we really focus on this show what the entrepreneur and the founder journey's like. But you're really in the thick of it now. This brand has been around for a really long time, and you're doing something really complicated, which is managing the supply chain. But before we get into all that, Ashton, I want to ask a little bit about you. How
Yeah.
did you get started in this line of work, and what specifically led you to working with Bragg? Because I mean, iconic all around, but like you've got to have some chops to get into a
Oh,
company like this. So where'd you come from, Ashton? Give us a little background on you.
Yeah, of course. I did my undergrad in Santa Barbara at UC Santa Barbara and worked at a tech software firm for a couple years afterwards. Wasn't really what my long-term plan was. I realized it wasn't really for me, so I decided to go to grad school at the University of Oregon. I got my MBA in sustainable business practices. So really that's where my heart is. That's where I am. But I also, I fundamentally believe that good corporate sustainability lives within the supply chain house. That's where you get things done. That's where the materials are. That's where, in my opinion, the biggest impact can be made. So with that in mind, I graduated from that program in 2020, so right in the middle of the pandemic, and it was tough. And my partner was in Santa Barbara, so I moved back down and was looking for jobs, and the one for Bragg opened up, and it was a supply chain data analyst. And I, like you, it's funny that you said that. Bragg has been in my brand awareness, some like kind of unconsciously for a very, very long time, realizing after living in Santa Barbara for 10 years that it actually has its home and its origin in Santa Barbara was news to me after moving back, which is wild because like you, it's everywhere, it's in my head, but it hadn't clicked that that's where it was. And so, I applied for the role and I got it, and it's been a wild ride. Since 2020 to now, I've been on the supply chain team doing a variety of different things. And like you said, we've been growing fast. And so that's really exciting for me because it's been I guess almost over 5 years now. And it really does feel sometimes like the first year because it's just new every single month, every single day. It's something new. So
I mean, I can totally imagine, especially what's going on in the world today. It seems like every day on the news you're hearing about supply chain issues, and they're like, oh, and especially I'm in Los Angeles. All we ever hear about is how things are backed up at the LA port and things like
yeah.
that. And like, we've talked to so many founders on this podcast now, and one of their pain points is always like I always like how to get it from there to here kind of stuff. So then let's talk about Bragg specifically, because you like again joined the company. It was already in motion. You're over 100 years at this point. But tell us like what you've already learned about navigating like your high growth periods of through this global uncertainty we're going through now. Like what specifically are you guys dealing with?
Ooh, that's a great question. What I have learned is a lot, everything. But specifically, I think what Bragg is dealing with during this high growth period, like you said, is a lot of kind of procurement delays, I think is pretty across the board, pretty common right now. And I think a lot of the lead times are longer. And what that makes it hard to do is plan for demand and volume, especially as a growing company. Because right when you're growing, you don't always have the most foresight into what is going to happen. Things are, you're getting new customers, you're launching new products, it's happening really fast. And when these lead times for those products start to extend, you're asking, people who don't know the answer to have a volume and a forecast for you 3 months in advance. And they're like, we don't have that for you. We're growing. So it's kind of to be a growing company right now amidst like lengthening lead times is tricky. And I think that that's something that Bragg has learned and it has managed has relatively well, but I think everybody's going through it right now, especially if they're a growing brand.
That is so true. And that's actually one of my favorite questions. It's like when somebody asks you a question about like, well, when do you think you'll have it done? Especially in my business. So like, when could you get this done? And then it's always like there's so many different elements in any business. Like, well, when are you going to get me the assets? Or when am I going to have this and this? And then they're always like, I love this one. Well, give me a ballpark. Give me a
Right.
ballpark, right?
I
Because
mean,
they
and
just want a date.
I know. And when you're launching new products, you don't always know. You're like, hey, so the buyer likes the product. When are we launching in that store or in that region, in that retailer? And they're like, I don't know. We have a X% likelihood. And now procurement is like, okay, so you have a 20% likelihood for 3 months out. Do I need to start planning it now because of the lead times? And so I think as right now, as we're dealing with some of this uncertainty, it's the planning has gotten trickier for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And why don't you give us, if you could just give us a little insight into like what exactly does your job entail as a supply chain manager? What does that mean?
Yeah, and just like any small company, this is flexible and changing and dynamic. I came in as a data analyst, so specifically, I built a lot of our data environment for viewing production adherence as well as forecast performance, inventory, weeks of stock, things like that. I've since stepped into the role of manager, so I manage our entire S&OP process. So what I do is I sit in the house between sales, strategy, sales, and I enable the relationship between sales and operations to make sure that we are flowing smoothly. So I really sit at that nexus of when we turn a forecast into an operating plan. And it's really fun. It's dynamic. It's exciting. But that's the main part of my day to day. And then I also help out with our sustainable journey as well.
Okay, so you mentioned working with sales, but how much do you work with marketing then? Because here's what I'm wondering. So obviously, Bragg is synonymous with this apple cider vinegar. We'll just say the basic flavor, right? But now you guys have come out with so many different new products like this pineapple turmeric that I am just loving. So what does that look like as far as innovation? Is that stuff coming through, I guess, technology and development? Is that something that like sales leads, or is that something that's coming through marketing? And when this is all coming together, let's say a new product, when do they come to you and say, Ashton, we're doing this? And then do you ever have that moment where you're like, you know what? Not a good time to launch a pineapple product, guys. Really hard to get pineapple. Like, how does that whole
Um,
mix come together and how much involved in that are you?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's funny. I laugh because I feel like every operations person ever to either listen to this podcast or just work in operations has had that moment where you're like, not a good time, guys, not a good time. I think every growing brand experiences that. And I do think that every growing brand handles new products and innovation differently. At Bragg, it's extremely collaborative. So I actually sit on the team and mostly as a kind of fly on the wall for our new projects. And I follow the process. And then at a certain point when we're ready to launch, that's when I step in and I start translating it over to my team for an operational plan. We have a lot of really good folks with hands in on that process, and it's sales members, it's marketing members, it's our design and our graphics, which I guess is in the marketing house, it's operations, we have our finance people. So it is an extremely collaborative process. And anybody will tell you who's working in this space that new products are hard. You can't, it is such a all-encompassing thing, and especially because Bragg is remote, trying to figure out how to launch these things is tricky. But I think that we are really getting our feet under us in doing this, and uh, remaining collaborative has been the key on this.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, me coming from the marketing side, I'm telling you, we're always about let's do something new and different. And I've had many discussions with various, operations and salespeople where they look at us like you literally exist to make our lives miserable.
Yeah.
Like you can't just, but you have to
You gotta
adapt. You have to
run.
adapt to
Yeah.
new technologies, you have to adopt new things in the market. So, let's talk about, maybe something of a supply chain innovation that you've been a part of at Bragg that's made a really measurable difference? Has there been something that you've helped them to change along the way, like just in your time there, that's like, oh wow, this has really made a difference to what we're doing? Or do you guys already have such a streamline in place that you're like, you know what, we're really efficient the way we're doing, and now we just focus on, keeping quality and values in place?
Oh no, there's always efficiency to be found. That is, if you stop growing in that world, you're going to become irrelevant very soon. So I personally believe there's always efficiency in your supply chain to be found. And coming from the training of sustainable business, I do think an efficient supply chain is a sustainable supply chain. So for me, it's really been something really cool to brag to see how we have changed our supply chain in order to be more efficient and to be able to adapt quickly. And I think one of the more tangible things I can speak to is some of our location rearranging has changed. We used to not do that as efficiently as we could, but now we try to pack close to where we warehouse, have it in central distribution locations. That way we can get out to our retailers a little bit more efficiently. We look into rail when we can using rail cars versus trucks, and that helps cut some of our emissions and our costs down. So things like that, I think, reorganizing the network in that way has really shaped how we at Bragg can remain agile and kind of keep moving along with our growing business.
Okay, that's really cool that you mentioned, something regarding trucks and then railways, because there's been a lot of news lately about having now driverless trucks. They want to do, obviously AI is big and everything. They're trying to figure out, can we actually start doing transport with trucks in a driverless way? Because apparently we're having a driver shortage, which I didn't even know about, or maybe it's just made up on the news. I don't know. I just literally heard the story. So when you hear stories like that, does that make your brain automatically start thinking about, and it's usually, I'm sure, at 3 a.m. in the morning, about, what, guys, this could potentially affect us. We need to maybe start doing this a different way. Like you said, we need to rely more heavily on railways. So, like, when you hear stuff in the news like that, what does that do to Ashton Roberts' brain?
That's a great question. I try not to stress too much because there's always going to be something, especially right now amid this uncertainty, and to live a happy and balanced life. If I do it every once in a while, wake up in the middle of the night and be like, oh shoot, like there's something X happening. Did we get that shipment out on time kind of thing? But for the most part, I think it excites me. In total, when I think about some of these new technologies coming down and some of the ways that we can adapt. Um, Driverless trucks, it's not something I can speak to personally. I don't have much. I don't know if Bragg is working with it. I don't know much about that. But speaking to the rail specifically, that's I think something that excites me in general is transitioning to more efficient forms, more cost-effective forms of transportation that will reduce our emissions and keep us moving. It excites me, I think, mostly. I think that's what it does to me. It gets me excited that we can always keep growing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the growth idea is always in the mind of any business person's head. It's like, how do I keep growing? How do I make sure it's going to go in the way my company wants to? And let me just say, when you mention rail, it actually lights up my heart because I come from an Amtrak family, which you didn't know.
Oh,
My father was actually a conductor on Amtrak for about
oh, no
45
way.
years. Yes.
Oh, it's so
Um,
funny that you
and
say
I
that.
grew up
I
riding the
love
trains
Amtrak.
between, yeah, New York and Washington my whole life. And
Oh
I'll
man.
let you know this. I actually have a family pass that allows me to ride Amtrak for my entire life for free.
You want to get me on that family
Yes,
pass? Because
yes.
I love Amtrak. I used to when we have a small office in Santa Barbara and I spent some time in Orange County and I would just toot myself over to the Irvine station, hop on the train, get on the train, ride to say it was great. I love the train. Like big fan.
Well, next time you come down here, we are definitely getting on the train and going down to San Diego. It's one of my
Sweet.
favorite routes. But you know what? Let's talk more about like opportunities for supply chain. So, what are you seeing maybe is like the biggest opportunities in the supply chain innovation in the wellness sector? Is there something like you're seeing that it's like, oh, this is new, this is something we could do? Or is it really relying on things that are already there, like the rail system?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a that's a really good question. I how do I answer this? I do think that for a brand, it is important from a supply chain perspective to assess your own core competencies and what you're doing now and make that the most efficient, um, make that the most stable you can before moving on and adopting the next newest best thing. I do think that, if you're over here working on some fancy new packaging design, but then your I don't know, location layout and your supply chain design isn't locked in, I think that that might just be kind of a red herring and you're focusing on the wrong thing. So I do think getting the basics done first with what we have is important. And then moving on to some of the cooler new kind of technologies. At Bragg, I mean, we have spent the past few years really locking in our distribution network and our supply chain. And obviously there's still some growth happening and some moving there, but I feel relatively confident in the position we're in right now. And because of that, we're able to then grow and release new products like the pineapple turmeric. Because we've locked in what we have been doing, we're additionally looking into some packaging changes and things like that. And I think some of this can only happen when you lock in the basics and when you focus on what is already there and how to make that work for you the best. Kind of like take the low-hanging fruit, lock in what you're doing, and then move on to the stuff that might be a bigger bite.
Well said, very well said. Again, we've talked to other entrepreneurs, on this podcast, and they've come up against that very thing where they kind of fell in love with an idea and then they realized this is not going to work for our business. Like we can't do either this packaging they wanted or this specific ingredient from this area because it wasn't going to work with what they had to work with. Like, what I guess either the money or the resources they had. So, when we're talking about things like supplier partnerships, what does that look like on your end? Because obviously, Bragg is really big on maintaining their ethics and their sustainability. I mean, it's such a rock solid brand, right? So, like, what does your supplier partnerships look like, and how involved in they are with sorry, and how involved are you with them?
That's a great question. And kind of following off what I was saying before and locking in what you're doing best and then moving to the next things, I think that flows into everything, including your supplier relationships. When you're thinking about supplier relations, first of all, put your people first, put people first, because a good supplier where you are going people first rather than data and performance first, they'll grow with you. That data and that performance will get to where you want it to go if you can work with the supplier and work with the partner. And I think that's something that Bragg has put a lot of effort into is like we want to find long-term solutions, long-term partners, long-term vendors that we can be with for, a long amount of time. And I think that reduces the risk on our end of losing something, of losing a product, having to go find something else. And I think that by putting the people first and being willing to work on all of the other things as they come has been huge for Bragg. We're definitely a very people first brand in that regard. And that's kind of why I've stayed so long is because it kind of goes to every part of the organization. And so that I think is really important. So if you think of as a growing brand, especially where we're at right now, we need to be thinking, okay, we're not just in this like run to get to a certain size. We're now thinking long term. How can Bragg maintain this and keep growing for a long period of time? And I think part of that is really focusing on your relationships and making sure that the folks that you partner with are in it just as much as you are. And that's been huge for Bragg is really finding some of those relationships.
I can just imagine because again, the quality of the product has always been there. Like I've never heard one person say, God, that just wasn't as good as the last, bottle that I had, or they did this and it just wasn't like what I would expect from Bragg. But when you're doing things like trying to ensure your sustainability, and even uphold your environmental regulations and your goals kind of thing, how much does technology I guess really technology and supply chain play into that because let's use like turmeric as an example. We seem to, especially in our very hyper consumer era that we're in right now, we find one ingredient and then the market wants to beat it to death, right? So when you're developing like a product like that has something like turmeric or pineapple or whatever, have you run into instances where it's something like, wow, that ingredient seems to be really scarce because everyone's using it? And does it ever make Bragg step back and be like, you know what, we don't want to jump on that bandwagon because it seems to not be great for the environment? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think sourcing is a big piece that we are looking to tackle shortly. We haven't run into that yet. We have run into supply issues that pertain to that. But as we go through I don't know if you knew, but we just got B Corp certified about a year ago. And the recertification standards that are coming up are really, they're a lot more robust. And it's going to force companies like ours, for the better, to think about some of these things that we not necessarily haven't been thinking about, but perhaps don't have a strategy yet towards. So sourcing is one of those things that I'm really excited for and looking into kind of working closer with our partners to mitigate some of these issues, like you mentioned, sourcing ingredients that might be scarce or might be somehow problematic in a certain way and figuring out alternatives to that. And I think that's an opportunity that Bragg has to go get and a challenge that I'm really excited to meet. In terms of your question about how do we at Bragg use technology and use tools, what tools do we have to like maintain our sustainability journey and keep running on that road? I think like I had mentioned before, efficient supply chain is a sustainable supply chain. I can't get off of the, less emissions, more efficient trucking, less emissions, things like that. So technology around making sure that our trucking is efficient and our warehousing is efficient, things like that. And then we also have a supplier agreement that works with our suppliers to make sure that they're um, doing the best they can in order to do the best they can for us. So I think those are kind of two tools that we use to make sure our relationships in our supply chain is working efficiently and sustainably for us.
Excellent. Yeah. I mean, again, it's, I'm always a little leery, honestly. Like when I hear, again, the latest trend, I'm like, oh, what's the next story going to be? Like, where's the
Right,
abuse going to come up? Because it always seems
right.
to be something. It's either like we're stripping the land, or now there's like, forced animal labor, which of course I'm totally against, being a lifestyle vegan. So there's
Yeah,
always something, I feel like. So I will tell you right
totally.
now, I am not an early adapter. I'm the girl that always waits to see how it's going to play out.
I
But,
get
with
that.
that said, like when you are leveraging partnerships like with Planet F Forward, how do they say it? Planet
It's
FWD.
forward. Yeah, you just say
Okay.
yeah.
Like when you're utilizing that, like what does it look like when you're trying to use them to like track and reduce carbon footprint? Like, is that always on your mind, reducing your carbon footprint? Or what is it when you're getting into a supply chain question, I guess my question is, what's the first thing you're looking at? Is it carbon footprint? Is it sustainability? Is it, consumer demand? What happens there on your desk?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I am always looking to reduce our carbon footprint. That is my training, that is my background, that's my passion, that's where I believe we need to go. So that's where I'm at. I think Bragg is there as well. I do think that, like I said, these new B Corp standards are going to force us to formalize a lot of the things that we've been doing kind of intuitively. We've been around for a long time. We have a very relatively sustainable product. Apple fermentation is pretty low impact. And vinegar fermentation, pretty low impact. So there's a lot of things that Bragg does intuitively, and B Corp we felt was an extension of that. And so I think this next round will would force us to formalize that. And part of formalization of some of this is working with Planet Forward. I'm so glad you brought them up. I would give give a toe to be able to shout them out whenever I can, because they are a wonderful group. We've been working with them for over a year now. Actually over 2 years now, I think. Yeah, we've been working with them for a long time, and they're fantastic. They'll run life cycle analysis and corporate GHG inventories, and they'll work with you to set targets and understand your impact. Up until this date, we have just done product lifecycle analyses in order for me on the supply chain to pinpoint changes we can make. One of those was a transition into partial post-consumer recycled material for our 10-ounce plastic bottle. So we did that as a result of some of this Planet Forward work, and that was really exciting. And actually, I'm really stoked because recently we kicked off a corporate lifestyle or corporate GHG inventory to look at our impact across the entire organization rather than just cherry picking items. So I'm very excited for this work with them. And to your point, like it is, they play a huge role in this. Tracking plays a huge role in how we think about a sustainable supply chain and how we aim to move forward with our sustainable supply chain.
Right on. I mean, that's the other thing that's always like I'm thinking about when I'm as a consumer buying something. It's
Mhm.
God, it's like, what is the carbon footprint of this product and of me too? There's so many things now that, especially because of social media, we get served, basically like you should buy this and makes your life easier. And sometimes you play into it. You're like, okay, order it, and then it shows up at your house and it has so much styrofoam and packing and things like that. You're
Yeah.
like, I did not need this one piece of fruit wrapped
Box
in
in a
like
box, in
15
a box,
pounds of,
box, in a
yeah,
box. Yeah.
yeah. In fact, there's one company whose name I won't even mention because I don't want to give them any more publicity, but they make decorative fruit bouquets. And I
Uh-huh.
swear to God, if anyone ever sends that to me, I'm like, never do that again. And by the way, now you must go donate to this company because you've literally ruined the world trying to send me this stupid fruit bouquet. But with that said, because that's my pain point, I know you have a lot of your own pain points. So if there's one thing that you could change about how supply chains typically operate in the food industry, what would that be?
Oh, yes, I saw this question on the prep questions, and it's the only one that I have multiple question marks around. There's a lot. There's a lot of things that I think about, like more rail. That'd be great. I'm a huge, big rail fan. Let's do more rail. We already talked about that. Let's go. Amtrak. Here we go. Better waste streams. That's always a one on my mind as well. Better packaging, better sourcing. There's all these things. I think the biggest thing to kind of encompass all of that is more accountability for impacts and more accountability for impacts across your supply chain. And when you're a brand like ours who has tons of partners, tons of people helping your business, um, it's tough. It's tough to really encompass all of those impacts. And it's also tough to think of them as your own because you're like, I don't have control over that. Or I guess it's easy to fall into that trap where you're like, I don't have control over that. It's not my business. Um, but ultimately your business grows and benefits off of that. So I think something that, again, the B Corp standards that just came out and other companies are really starting to do is focus on those what we call scope 3 emissions and those supply chain emissions that you aren't necessarily immediately responsible for and accountable for, and counting them as your own, working with your partners and saying, yes, I recognize that this is not my business, but it's your business and your business is my business. So like, let's work together. And again, that goes back to good relationships. Let's work together to improve X factor, your waste stream, your water usage, whatever, your energy usage, and whatever it is. So I think accountability within the supply chain is going to be the next step is people just saying, you know what, this is part of what I need to fix. And I'm instead of like, that's not my problem. So that's where I would like to see kind of companies step up and make a bigger impact.
It's true because it truly is all of our problems. Like, as for as much we're like, no, somebody else will figure that out. It's like,
Yep.
no, maybe we should be the ones to figure that out. But,
Okay.
sometimes too, I guess there's not everything you can control and you don't really know what's coming down the line, especially let's talk about consumer demand and how that really affects what you have to do personally.
Yeah.
Because again, we'll see like an uptick suddenly in social media where everybody's talking about apple cider vinegar. Do you see a direct correlation when these trends start popping up again that suddenly you're seeing like a bigger demand in maybe certain parts of the US or certain like even cities or even globally where you're like, wow, we can tell they're having a real, moment over there, let's say, with apple cider vinegar because suddenly like everybody in Philadelphia is ordering apple cider vinegar. Do you track those kind of, I guess,
Yeah.
let's say trends and fads?
That's a great question. This is a good opportunity. You set it up for me to shout out our marketing team. They really have their finger on the pulse with some of this, and they generate a lot of the pulse with some of this because they're kick-ass. They're very good. And I think part of what makes my job on the supply chain easier is being able to plan and prepare for some of that. And so when the marketing team is on top of trends like that, that then feed into when the sales team is on top of trends like that, that then go back into the forecast that then I get to see. And so I think like, again, I can't like emphasize enough the collaboration that it takes to get there because, if I'm the person sitting, I'm like, hey guys, like, hello everybody, there's a big, Hawaii is taking apple cider vinegar off the shelves. Like we need to, and nobody else has seen it, that's a problem. I shouldn't be the first person to catch that. And sometimes it happens that way where I'm like, hey, there's a huge demand for this out of this specific region. Let's talk about that in our SNOP and our meetings to be able to capture that into the forecast. But really, a lot of the sales team and the marketing team have done a great job in prepping us on our end for that, rather than us having to react when we see it come through in the performance.
Well, that's good. I mean, such a collaborative environment is definitely great in any business. And it sounds like Bragg's a pretty awesome place to work personally. But you did mention earlier in our conversation that you're remote. So is most of the company remote or just like your area?
No, we are all remote. We back again, a little history. We were founded and based out of Santa Barbara, California, beautiful place, and that's really where I think our soul is as a company. But pandemic happened, and I think organization really realized that this remote thing could work, and we would have to commit to it to make it work. And so, pretty early on, actually, I'd say the management and senior leadership committed to the idea of us going remote and making it work. And I think between their commitment to making it work, as well as no threat of having to move and go back to an office, has really allowed people to settle in this virtual lifestyle and make it work. And I think that again feeds into that collaboration and stuff like that. So yeah, we're completely remote. We've got a small office in Santa Barbara that allows some people to go in and we do meetings there and in-persons there. And that way we can maintain some of our collaboration. But yeah, I think the commitment to remote life has really blossomed at Bragg. I think it's the way we work and it works for us.
That's pretty awesome. For most of my career, I've been totally remote, whether running my own business or even working for someone else. And I've always loved it. I thrive in it. Now, I've had friends and even some family members say, "How can you make yourself do anything? Like I would just never do anything." And I'm like, "Well, I mean, the motivation to pay my bills has always
Yeah,
been
that does the trick.
like I don't understand when people say that, and when we hear stuff on the news where they're like remote working doesn't work because people won't work, and I'm like, well, um I'm going to have to pay my bills, and I know in order to do that I have to do my job and do well at my job or I will get fired. So I don't
Yeah.
understand when they say like businesses like can't run like that. Now obviously there's certain businesses like a brick and mortar store where you need people physically there is different. But if you have a team in place that's like, yes, we are working on this product because we want to pay our bills, and there's some accountability. I just never understood that why most companies didn't stick with the remote thing.
Totally. And I do think there's some things that cannot be replaced in person time, but I actually think the remote work helps Bragg do better at those things. So for instance, on the supply chain specifically, we have to go see our partners. We need to go see our bottlers, our packers, our manufacturers, our farms. Like we have to go and talk to these people. But when the person traveling to go and talk to these people then spends the rest of the week at home and able to help with their family obligations, and I think that actually allows the travel to feel a little less hectic and frantic and dreadful. I know that traveling for work when I was in person in a prior life, not at Bragg, it was always really stressful because it was like, well, I go and I travel and I'm away from home, but then I'm away from home all week when I have to go into my office. So it's like you feel this sense of kind of chaos in your life. And so I do feel like the remote work has allowed the supply chain at least to engage in our partners in a much more meaningful and less hectic way. And we're able to go see them more often and not feel worried or stressed about it, that we're missing out on some personal life or social life or family life obligations.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I really believe in that work-life balance. I need to be able to step away from my desk, do other things, come back, and then really be able to focus on that. And also, the thing that I find amazing is this. It's like when you walk away from your desk, your brain doesn't just stop thinking about work. Now, I'm not talking about like obsessing about your work, but your mind is always solving problems, right? And I find it really super helpful, especially when I'm dealing with something, to be able to step just outside, even in my garden, to give
Yeah.
my brain time to relax, think about that problem kind of in its own little like cubicle, right? And
Yeah.
I'm doing something else. And lo and behold, I come back and I'm like, oh, I know what I need to do. And I
So
really feel
right.
like we don't give people the space to do that. Like, no, sit in your computer, hammer, hammer, hammer. And then you can do everything else. When really the way your brain works is that it's constantly considering these different things and options and making associations and figuring stuff out, right?
For
And you don't
sure.
get to do that if you're just forced to look at a screen.
Yeah.
Is my and another thing why I really like Bragg's mission, because I really do feel that it really is supportive of health and wellness in a very honest way. So tell me personally, what is one of the things that you love about your job and one of the things that you maybe don't hate but are not so happy about your job?
Um, well, I kind of to follow on your point, doing still a lot of the analytics here at Bragg, there's a lot of problems that I have to sit and solve. Um I like last week had to do a pretty big overhaul of one of our big analytics environments, and I couldn't figure out a problem. I kept hitting an error. I went outside. I walked around my neighborhood. It was a beautiful sunny fall afternoon. I pet a cat that was outside, and then all of a sudden I was like, "Oh, that's what I need to do." Walked back in and figured it out. So I think by allowing us, and to answer your question, Bragg allows its employees to have a lot of flexibility in their health and wellness and how they actualize that. And I think that allows Bragg to get the best out of me and to get the best out of the employees. I've been here for 5 years and I love it because I mean, supply chain is great. It's interesting, it's fun, it's problems to solve, but like ultimately what keeps me here is the people and the company and the dedication to its mission and its goals. I think that's really important. It feels very authentic. If I, you know, need to take an hour in the middle of the day to go for my run or go for my walk or pick, I don't have children but a lot of folks do need to pick kids up from school, Bragg is like, yeah, go do it. Take your time, come back when you're ready, and we'll be here for you. Kind of this very flexible way of handling your life and balancing your life. And I think that's what makes it really special. And people care. I got married over the summer, and it was a really special time. And it also meant I was not fully focused necessarily on work for that entire time, but everybody was super supportive. They asked me how it went when I got back. Everyone was very excited, and they've again known me for a long time. So I think it was really fun to see that all come together, and it felt very I felt very supported during that time, even though my thoughts weren't fully with work. So I think my favorite part about Bragg, and one thing that just keeps me here and keeps me excited, is the people and the support and the dedication to the um to the lifestyle and to the healthy lifestyle. As for your
Well,
other question about, oh yeah,
no,
sorry.
congratulations on your
Thank
marriage.
you.
That is
Thank you.
awesome to hear. And love, I love in all forms. And I'm really glad when people have found their partner and someone that they can spend their time with. But what you just said about like you weren't fully focused on work, that's what I'm saying is you
Sure.
think you weren't, but your brain still
Mhm.
was working in a way that you weren't even aware of. Because
Yeah,
it's people are always like, oh, I just suddenly had this idea. And you didn't suddenly have the idea. Your brain had been working on that kind of in the background. And then
yeah.
when the idea was ready, literally presents it to you. You're like, oh, it just came to me. It's like, no, no, your brain was already working on that. Because we don't really understand how brains work. But
Uh-huh.
I just know, like, for me, there's just stuff that I just know that my brain is working on. And sometimes I'm vaguely aware of a thought and then it's fully formed and I'm like, oh, that's really amazing. And it's exactly like when people are writing a book, people are always like, how did you think of that? It's like, well, my brain is always thinking of stuff as yours is. You
Yeah.
just aren't always aware of it. So I think your brain was working for you
You
while you were
know,
playing your
you
marriage.
think and that's kind of goes back. I mean, you're feeding right into it. You're teeing it up here. I think that was part of it, is allowing me to have Bragg, allowing me to have the space and the break to like go and do the life thing that I needed to do. I came back a lot more rejuvenated, a lot more excited. I felt like I solved a bunch of problems and I was thinking about supply chain a little differently when I got back. So it was like one of those things where you're right, your brain never really stops. But if a company allows someone to take the space they need to live their life, when the moments happen, when the brain figures it out and they're excited to work, and they're motivated, you're just going to get so much more out of them rather than sitting down and hammering it away. Because ultimately, with a supply chain, the problems never go away. It's always moving. It's always dynamic. It's just what it is. Like, you're never going to get to a stable state. At least I hope we never get to a stable state, because that means we've stopped growing. And so I think when you're working in this world, you're always going to have a problem. It's just what supply chain and operations is. You're always going to have a problem. So if you give yourself the space to step back, take a break, take a breather, you're going to come back and be able to just be that much more productive and that much better of a colleague. So I agree with you there. I think you never really stop, but having the space helps do better in the future.
Well, as one of my bosses in my previous life once pointed out to me, that problems are just opportunities for solutions.
There you go.
And he was right.
Yeah.
Um, I will just say this has been delightful to talk to you. Please tell everyone that is listening where they can find Bragg online, just in case they don't have that website URL.
Oh, that's a great question. I have to pull up it. I think it's just bragg.com.
It is. It's just
Go on.
bragg.com. How easy is that?
Yeah, just easy as that. Go on, get yourself some product. I will say you've mentioned the pineapple turmeric a couple times. It is also my favorite. And then I'm also a nutritional yeast fan, big nutritional yeast fan, because I too am plant-based most of the time. So the nutritional yeast gets that extra pack of vitamins in there. And now I'm product plugging, which is silly, but I love it. So I'm here. I'm a spokesperson for it. Go find it. Go buy it.
Listen, nutritional yeast is it's like this super ingredient that I wish more people know about. I never knew what it was. Well, okay, I learned of it when I turned vegan, but I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like you could do so many things with it to get different flavors and textures and stuff. Like you guys, anyone out there listening to this podcast that has not tried nutritional yeast, of course, go over to Bragg and buy it from them. But it is the superhero of ingredients that you really need to try. Now, with that said, Ashton, we do have to go. It has been amazing talking to you. I had so much fun. I hope you did too. And you know what? Next time I'm up in the Santa Barbara area, I'm just going to have to look you up.
Yeah, just come on by the office, get some nutritional yeast, we'll put on some popcorn, it'll be great.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, have a great one.
Thanks for listening to the Wild Party Podcast. If you're an entrepreneur or professional who would like to be on this podcast, please visit boomtownmarketing.com and click on podcast. We believe that every business has the potential to change the world for good, and we want to support our community to help make the world more ethical, compassionate, and sustainable for all future generations to come. And if you're looking to build your business, no matter what level you're at now, request your free marketing consultation at boomtownmarketing.com and click Get Started.